As we all know, ChatGPT is the latest big thing, signing up 100 million users at the start of this year in just 2 months. And in addition, there's so many startups appearing every day that use ChatGPT and the underlying large language models, or LLMs, which is the technology that makes ChatGPT work. Kind of feels like there's almost like 10 more appearing every single day. So, how can you build your own ChatGPT? What if you wanted to build your own one? Now, under the hood, ChatGPT is an application built on top of a large language model. And these LLMs expose a basic API, so it's kind of up to you to build your application on top, implementing all the logic you need. And that's what ChatGPT is, an application built on top of a large language model. So are there tools to help you do this? If you wanted to build your application, what tools are there that can help you do this? Well, one tool is Semantic Kernel. It's a really good abstraction that handles a lot of the heavy lifting for you for interacting with large language models. It's an open source project from Microsoft, it's a .NET library, and it's aimed to kind of simplify how we interact with these models. And that's what we're going to talk about in this short session. Now, my name is Jim Bennett, I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft. You can find me all over the internet at Jim Bennett. My link tree is there, it's got links to my GitHub, Twitter, Mastodon, whatever. Please feel free to connect, and if you've got any questions after this session, please reach out and I'll do my best to answer your questions. So demo time, let me show you a ChatGPT clone that I've built that runs in your console. So I've got my application here, it's .NET 1, so I'm going to do .NET Run. And it says, hello, ask me a question. So what is the most recent Star Wars movie? The most recent Star Wars movie is Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, which was released in December 2019. It's the 9th and final installment in the Skywalker saga. Correct. Nice. Who is the main character? The main character of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is Rey, played by Daisy Ridley. Not more stuff about other characters in there as well, but that's what I wanted. So there we go. That is my console version of ChatGPT. I ask a question, get a response, ask a follow-up, get a response. So how does this work? So the LLMs, the large language models, the underlying technology for ChatGPT, these don't chat. They take a prompt and return a response. That's it. They don't understand previous prompts. They don't have any kind of history behind what they do. You give them some text. They give you some text back with no other context than the text you give them. So if you want to make them chat, they need guidance. So the way ChatGPT works, and these other kind of chat tools, is you ask a question, just like I asked about the Star Wars movie, and this is called a prompt because it prompts the model to return a response. Prompts and response, generally text, though there are models that can do images, audio, video, things like that. Now behind the scenes, the prompt is enriched to give that large language model some guidance. We do this with what's called a system prompt. So this is kind of basic guidance such as, you are a helpful chatbot. This helps guide the large language model when it works out the response that it's trying to give. This then, the system prompt and your prompt is sent to the LLM, you get a response back and that is shown to the user. The latest Star Wars movie, Rise of Skywalker. The user then asked another question. This time, the prompt the user gives is not only enriched with the system prompt, but the previous prompt and response. So it has the context of the previous question. This is known as memory. So we send to the LLM the system prompt, you're a helpful chatbot. Previous question, what is the latest Star Wars movie? Previous response, Rise of Skywalker. And the new prompt, who is in that movie? And that way the LLM's kind of got context when it works out what its answer is going to be. And the response comes back with the answer. So if we want to build ChatGPT, we need to implement gathering prompts from the user, communicating with the LLM, this memory for the chat history, and then returning responses. Those are the bits we need to build ourselves. And this is what Semantic Kernel can do. So Semantic Kernel can help you build a ChatGPT-like app. So what does it provide? Well, it gives you services to interact with large language models. It's designed for OpenAI, so either use the OpenAI ones directly or via the Azure OpenAI service. It manages system prompts to pre-configure the conversation. That's kind of built in. Same with the chat history, this memory, that is built into Semantic Kernel. As you chat, you can store the history and send the whole history to the LLM. You define what's called semantic functions, and these can be things like getting user input, returning a response, or they can be extra prompts that you send to the large language model. So the idea being that these semantic functions take text or return text or both, and then you build these into a pipeline. You chain these functions together in a pipeline and then use this pipeline to process what you want the action to do. And then it's got some core skills as well to send things to HTTP APIs or send things to files. So let's dig into the code and let's actually see this in action in the code. Here's my .NET project. I've got the Microsoft Semantic Kernel NuGet package installed. The core of my application is in this console GPT service, and I have a pipeline, and that has got the listen semantic function, the prompt function, and the respond function. And it does those one after the other. And this is the pipeline that gets run to make my application work. This listen function is defined as a .NET function. It's got an attribute to say that it's a semantic kernel function. And in this particular case, this just listens to the console. So that's where I type in my text. The output of this, the text, gets sent to my chat skill in the prompt function. In my chat skill, I have a prompt function here. It uses the OpenAI chat completion service, part of Semantic Kernel. And what this will do is this will take a chat history that is created with my system prompt, you are a helpful chatbot, then adds my user message to the chat history, sends the entire history to the large language model, gets a response, adds that response to the history, returns the response. So the first time I send this, the system prompt is, you're a helpful model. What is the latest Star Wars movie? The next time I send it, it's, you are a helpful model. What is the latest Star Wars movie? The latest Star Wars movie is Rise of Skywalker. Who is the main character? And so it builds up that history, and every time that entire history gets sent to the large language model. Now there are size limits, so you only get a certain amount of size for what gets sent. So over time history can drop off, but this is how kind of has that context for follow-up questions. I then take the output of this and send it to my respond skill, and this respond writes this out to the console. And that's how I build my ChatGPT-like application. Now, what's really powerful about these particular semantic functions is they're not tied to one particular object. As long as I've got a piece of code that's marked as a listen function, I can kind of swap different things in and out inside my semantic kernel. So I can say, you know what, I want a different listen or a different respond. I've got another set of semantic functions for listen and respond that use Azure Cognitive Services to do speech to text. So what I can do, I can bring those in instead, run my application, and I can communicate using speech rather than the console.
Hello. Ask me a question or say goodbye to accent.
Goodbye.
Why what?
Goodbye.
Goodbye. If you have any questions or would like to chat, feel free to come back anytime.
Now what I am logging here at the end is I'm logging that entire chat history. So this is the chat history that gets sent to the prompt. We have my system prompt, friendly, intelligent, curious assistant who's good at conversation, question, response, question, response. I've got that history. So this is the whole history that gets sent to the large language model. Now what's cool as well with these functions is I can implement these functions as prompts. So rather than write codes to do something, I can actually say, define a function that is in text and then send this prompt to the large language model. In this case, I've got a poem function, create this function with a prompt, take this, some form of input, and convert it to a poem in iambic pentameter. So if I put this in my pipeline, it'll take whatever is the result of the previous function call, drop that into input and send it on. And so if I add that to my pipeline and then run this, ask me a question, what is the most recent Star Wars movie? My pipeline is listening to my console, sending the prompt, doing a response. It's then sending it to my poem function, doing a response. And we have this lovely poem. The force of fate has brought us here to see the rise of Skywalker near. The ninth and final part of this tale, released in December, 'twas no fail. So on and so on and so on. So we've got poetry using a large language model built into our pipeline. And that is a very quick overview of what you can do with Semantic Kernel. Now you want to build this yourself? You can. If you go to github.com/JimBobBennett/consolegpt, that's all the code for doing this. So the GitHub repo, all the code is here. You've got all the instructions on how to get set up, how to set your API key, and how to get it working, and links to learn more. So with that, thank you very much. As I said, reach out to me, all over the internet, Jim Bob Bennett. If you've got any questions, please get in touch. Thank you.